Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. This video provides and explains agile methods, which is chapter 6. In this video, I will talk about the agile software development in general, and I will explain one type of agile, which is extreme programming XP. And there are many types of agile software development, such as Scrum. But in this chapter, we will focus only on extreme programming approach. Agile methods come to speed the process of software development. In other words, we need a rapid development and delivery for the software. Why we need a rapid development? As you know, now we live in an unpredictable environment, which means the requirements are not stable, are not fixed, they change frequently, and we have a dynamic environment. And that's why the requirements are gonna change from day to day. That's why we need an approach to adapt these requirements, because business operate in a fast changing requirement, and it is practically impossible to produce set of stable software requirements. So we need a method or a technique that enable us to adapt these changes or these new requirements in the software. That's why software has to evolve quickly to reflect changing business needs. And what does it mean, rapid software development? It means that specification, design, and implementation, which are software processes, are interleaved. In other words, we can say that these processes could be happened all together. And system is developed as a series of versions with the stakeholders involved in version evaluation. This means that the software or the system under construction could be implemented or developed in many increments, and each increment is gonna be evaluated by stakeholders. And the user interfaces are often developed using IDE, which means integrated development environment or interactive development environment, and the graphical tool sets. This means that we need to use case tools that automate the process of developing the GUI, the graphical user interface. And how or why agile methods appear? Because in the traditional approaches, such as waterfall model, like we had dissatisfaction. Okay, for example, the waterfall model doesn't support the changes, and it is a sequential process, step by step. But that's why we need new approaches that enable us to deliver the software in such fast way, and to adapt the changes that might occur or appear during the software process development. That's why we have new approaches, or let's say the agile approaches, which is focus on the code rather than design, and are based on the iterative approach to software development, and they are intended to deliver working software quickly and evolve this quickly to meet changing requirements. I want to say some, like, let's say it in other words. The agile methods generally focus on the working software. We don't focus on the documentation. For example, software requirement specification, design documents, test documents. We don't focus on documentation. We just focus on the code. In other words, we are looking for a working software, no matter how we develop it. Just we need the software works. That's why the aim of agile method is to reduce overheads or the cost in the software process by limiting documentation. I just said that we don't focus on documentation. Why we don't focus on the documentation? Because the documents gonna be changed according to the requirements, and to be able to respond quickly to changing requirements without excessive rework, which means that's why we don't focus on the documentation, because if new requirements appear, we need to change all the previous documentation. That's why we don't focus on the documentation in the agile methods. And this slide show the differences between the agile methods, which are on the green on the left hand side, and other approaches, or we call it plan driven approach, which is in the red color on the right hand side. And the agile method, individuals and interactions, we focus on the individuals and the interactions between the people, or let's say the development team, rather than processes and tools. And in the agile method, we just focus on working software, which means just we need the software works without any problem. We don't give attention to the documentation or the way of doing the software. On the right hand side, they focus on the documentation. Agile methods, one thing that characterizes agile method is the customer involvement, or let's say customer collaboration. In the agile method, there is, let's say, customers are working with the development team. So the customer is gonna be a team member in the development team in the agile method. What is the role for the customer? Here the customer is gonna give the requirements and make some kind of acceptance test. I will explain it in the next slide. And what characterizes agile is responding to change. In the agile method, we embrace changes. The changes are acceptable and gonna be adaptable without any problem, and we accept the requirements changes without any, let's say, without any stress or problem. Principles of agile methods. There are 5 main principles of agile methods. Number 1 is customer involvement. Customer involvement means that the customer is gonna be working with the team. The rule is to give the requirement and make prioritization and to evaluate the output of each iteration or increment. Second principle is incremental delivery. Here, rather than deliver the system as one shot, like waterfall model, the software is gonna be broken into increments, and the customer is gonna determine which requirements should be included in each increment. People, not process. The agile methods focus on people, which means the people have the right to choose or to apply the techniques they wish in order to complete their job without following specific processes determined in advance. Impress, impress change. Here, the agile method is proposed in order to accommodate requirement change. So, in the agile methods, we expect the system requirements to change and so design the system to accommodate these changes. And the fifth principle is maintain simplicity, which means here just we need to do what is required. Rather, we don't think about the future or what is gonna happen. Just focus on simplicity in both the software being developed and in the development process. Agile method applicability, where agile methods can be used. So, as I said earlier, that the agile methods they don't focus on documentation. So the products of agile methods has a poor documentation. So we don't use it in the critical system or in the large system. It is used on small or medium-sized product or software or system. And it is used when we need to custom system development within an organization where there is a clear commitment from the customer to become involved in the development process and where there are not a lot of external rules and regulations that affect the software. So, since the agile methods is applicable mainly on small or medium size, so we have a problem in scaling agile methods to large systems. What are the problems with agile methods? First one, it can be difficult to keep the interest of customers who are involved in the process. Here, as long as the customer working with the development team, it might be hard for the team members to keep the customer interest. The second one, team members may be unsuited to the intense involvement that characterize agile methods. Prioritizing changes can be difficult where there are multiple stakeholders. This one is gonna happen when we have different stakeholders, and as you know, different stakeholders they have different perspective, different views, and might be the prioritization process is gonna be difficult because it might has a conflict between stakeholders. Maintaining simplicity requires extra work. Yeah, to keep or to make things more simple, you need to work more and more on it, which means it's gonna be time consuming and extra work is gonna be done in order to achieve the simplicity. Contracts may be a problem as other approaches to iterative development. Agile methods and software maintenance. Here, most organizations spend more on maintaining existing software than they do on a new software development. So, if agile methods are to be successful, they have to support maintenance as well as original development. But here we have two key issues, which are the systems that are developed using an agile approach maintainable, or can agile methods be used effectively for evolving a system in response to customer change requests? This problem may arise if original development team cannot be maintained. And we're gonna talk in the next slides about pair programming approach, where two programmers are working on the same workstation in order to provide working software. This slide provides a comparison between plan-driven development and agile development. Plan-driven approach to software engineering is based around separate development stages, with the outputs to be produced at each of these stages planned in advance, which means the software process are gonna be separate. The input of one process is gonna be the output of the previous process. It's such like waterfall model, but it could be incremental development is possible. Iteration occurs within activities, while agile development, the software process, which are specification, design, implementation, and testing, are interleaved, and the outputs from the development process are decided throughout the process of negotiation during the software development process. We're gonna see the difference in the next slide. As you can see in this slide, the first figure, which represents the plan-based development, we have requirement engineering. The output is gonna be requirement specification, and then from this processes we are gonna go to design and implementation. If the requirements are changed, we need to go back to the requirements engineering process and we need to produce another or a new requirement specification and so on. So you can see on the requirement engineering and design implementation there's like iteration within the process. Yes, it could happen in the plan-based development. The figure below represent the agile development. So you can see requirement engineering goes directly to the design and implementation. We don't have a mediator between these two processes.